Everything's coming up greener.
Here's Harold Matthews. He is
The Garden Doctor. The Garden Doctor.
Hello and welcome to the Garden Doctor Live. We're live here. Did you know that?
I sure do.
Yes, we're here live.
Memorial Day, yes.
We don't really feel live because we're a little bit wore out today, and my wife, I didn't do exactly as I was told.
He never does.
So this time she twisted my arm and decided.
He deserved it. He's wearing that. So, he got it honest.
Yes, definitely. And now recovery is going to take a few weeks, and then hopefully I'll be better than I was before. Actually, what I got was a carpal tunnel and what do they call that thing in the elbow?
A different tunnel.
Another tunnel.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had double tunnel.
Yes, he did.
Fixed right up there. We have some fantastic vegetables right here in front of us. Some asparagus and broccoli.
Beautiful broccoli.
Swiss chard. This is an underused green in the Midwest. I'm not really sure why Swiss chard is not as popular.
Well, they're big on greens up in New Hampshire, out in the Northeast. Greens of all kinds, dandelion greens.
We love greens in New England. We love dandelion greens, milkweed greens, pigweed greens. We love them all, and Swiss chard is one of the greens that I was raised up on. And a green that you rarely see in the Midwest, which is beet greens. We raised a specific beet just for greens. It was called Seven Top. I can't even find the seed, for crying out loud. If anybody out there knows where I can find the seed, I would really appreciate it. It was called Seven Top because it had 7 sprouts on the top, 7 leaves on top, like the Swiss chard, and you could prune it off, and it would grow back, and prune it off again, it would grow back. And the beet was kind of insignificant. It was mostly for the top.
Well, I put in a row of beets for you in general, not because we use the beets, but because you want the beet greens. In fact, I've got one nice little row of beets going just for you.
Yes, you do, and that's lovely, dear.
Because I don't like beets.
I know you don't. I know you don't. In New England, beets are a staple. My aunt and her husband raise a 25-foot, 3 rows, 25 foot long, and let me tell you what.
Perfectly straight
when
as
he
well.
Plants, yeah, they're perfectly straight. The rows are absolutely immaculate. There's not a weed in there. There's not a bad leaf on any of the beets.
Beautiful garden. He does.
Absolutely beautiful garden, and they can up, I don't know, maybe 50 jars of beets, and they eat every single one of them.
Nothing goes to waste.
Not a thing. And these beets are have been found that your adding those to your diet really helps your blood.
Benefits.
Yeah, the
Absolutely.
beets are tremendously beneficial.
But I can't stand them. I'm sorry, Aunt B. I don't like them.
We've tried to juice beets.
Tastes like dirt.
Yeah, and I like the taste of them. So.
Earthy, they call it.
Earthy. But it is. We don't eat enough greens. We absolutely, positively do not eat enough greens.
And when I cook it for you,
in particular, the wild greens.
Yes, and then like the dandelions, they would have you go pick.
And
when you're
that's
young.
cultivated too. You can buy dandelions to plant in your garden.
Nobody wants to grow dandelions on purpose.
Hybrid dandelions are not quite as bitter. They've been hybrid specifically for their flavor and their texture.
But you cook them all the same, like a spinach. It's very easy. I was unaware of how to prepare them for him, and it's basically just like a spinach.
Yeah, just don't use too much water. Put a little bit of water in, and when and you know what? Put in the butter.
The butter.
Real butter.
The garlic powder.
Not this artificial crap. Use real butter, and real good fresh garlic powder, and that's it. You could put in a little salt and pepper if you wanted to, but just don't put too much water in there because you just boil away all the good stuff.
Yeah,
all the good stuff just.
You don't want to pour off the liquid at the end because that's where all the nutrients are
exactly.
as well.
Now it is a live show,
beautiful.
Memorial Day. I'm
is.
sure everybody's out grilling and chilling and whatever it is you
Maybe
do.
Maybe they'll see us on TiVo later. They're probably recording.
There you go.
Sure.
But you can't call later because this is live.
No, you got to call now while you're live. Yeah, we're here.
We want to discuss a little bit about Memorial Day too, and later on I've got I am a patient of the VA medical system, so I had decided I was doing something else, and then at the last minute there's just been so much talk about the VA medical system.
There's been a whole lot going on.
That I wanted to throw my piece in there. You know, I've got 2 cents. It's about all I've got.
Well, we've been dealing with the VA medical system for, well, as long as I've known you, and we have had things, good, mostly not so good experiences, with the exception of Vermont, the VA center up there.
And my new doctor now
he's great.
That's here. I have a fabulous doctor in the VA.
But he can't fix the system. You still wait for things.
No.
You still, and some of the stories that we have told over the years about his experience with VA, if I hadn't lived it myself, it's unbelievable. To tell people some of the things that have happened while in the VA system, people probably don't believe it, but it's true. And now to hear other people having similar experiences, while I don't enjoy that they're having these experiences, it kind of gives you some kind of justification that it's not just you know?
And somebody had to open the floodgates, and I just kept waiting for that to happen. I kept knocking on the door and trying to make it happen. And now that it has happened, I'm hoping that there will be some benefit come from all of this negative. You know.
And I had thought, honestly, since early 15 years ago to the last 5 years, that in our experience, things have been much improved. But I think that has more to do with your being service-connected, disabled.
I know I'm service-connected now, which
Makes
was
a
a
big
long
difference.
battle.
Yes.
Let me tell you, they kept saying no. They deny, and then if you keep beating at the door, they will let you in.
You get better treatment when depending on what you are, and that's almost not fair, really.
That's quite unfortunate.
But it has improved your services.
Exactly. I could not get any dental, and I had to have a special exception, and yet most of the damage due to my jaw and everything was service-connected.
And this surgery you've just had, we did not go through the VA medical system to have this done.
It kept being canceled and canceled and canceled.
And we finally had to go to the private sector after 7 years of pain and suffering, maybe longer, to get the surgery done in the private medical community because of the delays at the VA medical system. So that's our experience.
Yeah, and there's a lot more to it. Later on,
Sure.
There's a little piece we're going to play, and Memorial Day is not about veterans, though. And
not at all.
You may have heard that over and over again, but we want to say that there is a Veterans Day.
That's for you.
And this day is for those who have fallen in the line of duty, and there are specific parameters. And if we go outside and make exceptions to those parameters, then those people become belittled to some extent.
It diminishes the importance. It's like on the soccer team with your kids when everybody gets a trophy. Well, you know what? Sometimes only the special winner or deserving party should get that recognition, and not everybody, because then it diminishes the
I think that in regard to sports, I think that everybody should get a trophy until you get up to a certain grade.
Okay, kids
and then
are
you've
kids,
got to
right.
separate it.
Okay,
then you've got to separate it.
And
But
then,
when it comes to this is a day of decoration. You're supposed to be decorating the grave site of those who
have died during war.
During a war.
And then it was
women.
Expanded. Actually, I did some research on this, and I found out in doing this research
I'm going to eat my asparagus while she's telling
you do that. How little I did know about Memorial Day, and they did expand it to include all of those who have died while in the military. But it originally was started and during the Civil War and after the Civil War as a decoration day, and of course started by the women, because we're the ones who come up with all the great things. to decorate the graves of those who had fallen in death. And there was a north-south component involved after the Civil War. And oftentimes when troops fought in the South, even though they might have been from the North, they died and they were buried there.
They were buried where they died, right where they fell on the field oftentimes.
Yes.
They were not taken to a cemetery or anything else. There there was decomposition that happened.
Had to happen.
And there were so many bodies, and there were burial details dispatched on occasion, but a lot of times it was the locals that
And in general,
actually did
it was
the burying.
women who started really doing this, whose sons or family members went off to the Civil War and died and were buried somewhere that they may never be able to see and go. So, and their response was to decorate the grave site of a soldier whose family lived completely somewhere else and may never get to see where their loved one was buried. So that's how it was started, as Decoration Day. And I believe the first official Memorial Day service was held at Arlington National Cemetery on May 5th, 1968, I believe it was. And they do it in May.
Well, now wait a minute. It was declared Decoration Day in the 1800s.
Right, but the first Memorial Day,
Oh, the Memorial, okay,
nationally
Memorial Day,
recognized
okay, that
official
could be.
Memorial Day.
And you got your information off the
Well,
internet
there were several sites, and one of was from an article that a woman had wrote about her opinion as to whether 9/11 first responders should be who died should be included in Memorial Day, and of course that's an exception to the rule that you would love to make, and as a compassionate people, we want to do that,
Yeah.
but. And because they were kind of at war, even though it hadn't been declared yet. So who do you include, who do you not include, and when do you include everybody, and then when do you go back to what it started
There
as?
has to be parameters, but it is not about veterans. It is not about
this is not your
the
day.
living. It is not about anybody except decorating your. It's supposed to remind you, by seeing all the flags in the cemetery, by seeing the decorations that are on the grave sites of the soldiers and those who were in the armed forces and died during war. It's supposed to remind you of the sacrifice. And
Now, the first, one thing I thought interesting, the first time it was observed, it was declared to be observed on May 30th, and that date was chosen in part because that's when we have so many flowers in bloom and a good time to decorate with flowers, but more importantly because it is not the specific anniversary of any battle. It's meant to include all battles, and
now,
so they chose a
to
date.
incorporate the Garden Doctor and this show.
Mm-hmm.
The poppies are very, very important
Yes.
to.
Yes, the poppy, as everybody knows, on Memorial Day, we receive these, the Ladies Auxiliary from the American Legion have been famous, always known for giving out the poppies at Memorial Day. And this was really started as there was a poem that was written. A physician with the Canadian military, he wrote a poem in Flanders Field, and the opening lines refer to fields of poppies that grew among the soldiers' graves in Flanders, which I believe is in
I think it's in France. I think
See,
Flanders
my
Field is in France.
details are sketchy. Is amazing how much I didn't know. But he wrote that poem, and it was about the poppies. And then in 1918, a women's group inspired by that, they kind of came up with the poppy. And in 1920, the National American Legion adopted it as their official symbol of remembrance.
And it is still used in silks and in other forms as decoration. Now, they're very, very short-lived. That's one of the reasons why this silk works
And I have
much better.
one that I value with my life.
Yeah, and she has one living one at home.
It's
yes,
beautiful.
And poppies aren't that hard to grow. I've
Tell
had
me
some
that.
questions about poppies this month and in the past.
I started some
and we really
seeds.
didn't answer those questions very well. What you should do always, and this is how I have expanded my knowledge or focused my knowledge to this specific environment here, is drive around and pay attention where they grow in other people's yards.
The conditions, the
Look
sun,
at the exposure, look at the location, look at the variety, even stop and visit with the people.
You can learn a lot from the
you
old timers who've had them for
Most
years.
definitely. And sometimes you'll pull up and the people say, I don't know, those weeds were growing here when I moved in.
I think
you
we're
know?
the old timers now. I
Wow,
don't
okay.
know.
You're the old timer. I'm still
Speak for
running around.
yourself.
Yeah, speak for yourself. But there's a lot to be learned just by driving around town. One of the things, excuse me, that asparagus, that's pretty good.
Was
I'm
it
gonna
good?
eat one of
Okay.
these are candy
No,
onions,
don't
by
eat
the
the
way.
onion on the
Oh, yeah,
show.
this is delicious. They're fabulous. I'm going to eat one here in a minute.
You
But,
do that. I want the broccoli.
drive around town, look at the plants that didn't make it through this winter, and you will discover what you should not plant in your yard. Look at the trees that didn't make it. Look at the shrubs that had issues. Look at the plants that browned along out by the roadside.
Well, we're learning a lot
Look
in
at
our
the
own
ones-
yard right now.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of things that died this winter, and many of the things that were injured severely, and there was a lot of stuff that was affected by the salts. And I had a gentleman ask me just here a week ago. He called me on the phone and he said, "Look, I put in these beautiful evergreens out along the road, out on 44, as a matter of fact, out by Hillbilly Hill, on the right as you're going that way." And he did a nice job. And they gave him some privacy, some sound reduction, even some reduction of the emissions when a semi would go by or something. He wouldn't smell it as strongly. And they did a very, very good job. Unfortunately, they were Leland's. Leland's, I lost 4 or 5 around town in different landscapes, and some customers who had planted rows and rows of these lost them all.
So it's no longer one of your favorites.
It's not on the top of my list, and that's unfortunate because this is an absolutely beautiful plant. Very resistant,
Very.
fast growing, evergreen. It was great, but
Will you see all of the effects of this past winter on your plants this spring, or is it possible the trees, fruit trees, will show effects of it for a couple of years to come?
everything that is affected by droughts for 5 years. So a plant that goes through a drought can die 3 years later, 4 years later, 5 years later, and it's dying because it was weakened by the drought, and then another something is
all it
thrown at
takes,
it,
right.
like a late frost knocks the leaves off. Then we have a extreme cold, and boom, it's weakened. Now, Mother Nature can throw a lot at a plant, and it can recover from it if it's strong. And if it goes into the winter wet, and if it was fertilized as it was being
Well,
pruned.
you always have me water my plants out in October when it's cold out, no matter what. He has
It is
me
vitally
water.
important that the plants go into the
With a
winter
good drink.
wet. There are some exceptions to that, but not very many. And if you do that, and if you fertilize your plant at the appropriate time, I just discovered, by the way, that you don't fertilize, but don't put too much nitrogen on irises. We've got a fantastic outtake for you coming in the next show. A local iris farmer, a good friend of mine, and he's a hybrid. He hybrids
Are
iris.
you talking about granular when you throw it out on the beds?
don't put out
Don't
anything.
Put it in the
you
iris.
want to put a potato fertilizer on your iris.
Now, what's
like
the
a
difference?
6-24-24, low nitrogen.
Okay, and that's because
You want phosphorus is what you're targeting, the phosphorus, and you want to stay away from nitrogen. It will sometimes cause the plant to go weedy.
phosphorus, like your old wash tub water, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Phosphorus and potash, and those are the things that the iris need, and it does not want as much nitrogen.
Did not
so
know that.
not one fertilizer works for everything. But the gentleman that had stopped me on the street asked me about poppies. He said, "I want to grow a bunch of different poppies." Well, you have to provide an environment for poppies. They like a little bit of a sandy soil, but they like to be evenly moist. They like humus in the soil, but they don't want to be in a humus-rich soil. So you mix. You want to make sure that it drains well. So sometimes you got to put some sand down.
Where mine
mix
is
it in.
quite sandy, actually, the one that's surviving.
Put
well.
in some peat moss, mix it in, but not, you don't want it to be all peat
Right.
or all sand. And
See, we've planted things around it where we've incorporated peat moss into that sandy soil, and it has probably benefited from
and
that.
it wants some
Sure.
pretty good drainage.
Which it has. It's kind of on a slant.
So you don't want it on flat ground where it's going to be saturated by water.
sense.
It wants full exposure to light if it can get it. 100% light. That's why they're in fields of poppies.
Now, I started some seeds. I don't know if you saw the seed trays I've got going. I've started some delphiniums, some poppies from the seed heads. Now you had me collect those if I wanted them.
Oh, they
I
did
dried
germinate?
them. I showed them on the last show. Those seeds did germinate. I've also got some starts of the trumpet flower that I brought back from when my girlfriends and I went out to New Jersey before the hurricane a couple years ago. So I've started all those seeds. The poppies, if I don't recognize which is which anymore, I didn't mark them, but they are all coming up. So as soon as I figure out which is which,
I can
do they
tell you.
look a lot like
I can-
delphiniums? A little fuzzy? The whole tray's fuzzy and it's half and half.
Angel plant will look a lot like delphinium, yes.
Okay, then that's the tray I put those in.
Yeah, but it should be apparent real quick, the difference between the two.
I had something else interesting on the Memorial Day discussion.
Oh, I'm not done with that by any
Oh,
means.
no, I
Go ahead.
wanted to add something in there. And don't forget, we are live tonight.
We
so
are.
give
If you
us a
want
call.
to give us a call and
And-
take a break from your
Sure.
beer and Skittles there.
And tell us,
ball game coming up tonight, too.
Oh,
you know.
yeah. Ooh, let's not forget
Not
that.
until
Will we
after
be home
the
in
show.
time? We're going to have to leave the show early.
Watch this show, and then we'll tell you when the show's over, you can go to the ball game.
All right, give us a call live now before you watch the show.
Or
and,
don't. Just sit back and watch. We don't
And
care.
if there's
We don't
somebody
care.
you want to remember on Memorial Day and shout out and give for their name, give us a call and be happy to do that
Oh,
too.
we'll take any excuse.
Sure, why not?
Any
Anybody
reason
to
you
talk
want
to on the
There you
phone.
go.
We like talking on the
What
phone.
was it you wanted to mention?
Well, I did not realize, as far as the flag, the American flag, on Memorial Day. Now, this is according to Wikipedia. Of course, you got to take everything from Wikipedia on the internet with a grain of salt. But it says on Memorial Day, the traditional procedure is to raise the American flag all the way to the top and then slowly lower it to half staff. That is where it is supposed to stay until noon.
Till half
and then
day,
at
yes.
noon, it is raised back to full height again and stays like that for the rest of the day. And that is supposed to demonstrate or signify, after all those men and women dying and being memorialized for Memorial Day, that after that we have the resolve to come back, be strong, and fight for liberty and justice
We
for all and
recover
fly
quickly.
high again.
Yes.
And that is the significance of the flying of the flag
I
that
did
way
not
on
know
Memorial
that
Day.
until you researched that.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting, really. The tradition is deeply steeped, and yet most people really don't know.
Now here's something I had no clue of again today. Did anybody know that at 3 o'clock we have the national moment of
I had
silence?
no idea. No, I did
It's
not.
a moment of remembrance. I can't remember the exact name of it, but at 3 o'clock, apparently everybody stopped to do this. I knew nothing about it, or I would have done it.
I
And there is a
honestly did not.
national moment of remembrance, it's called. And I believe it's at 3 o'clock on Memorial Day that we
Interesting.
stop and do that. And I'm not sure if our radio stations, TV stations did that or not. That's what I read, and I knew nothing
again,
of that.
Now, I wanted to mention something about long-term blossoms to put on grave sites or to for whatever purpose you're using them. Recently, it was Mother's Day, and I gave my wife a dozen roses, and her son gave her a dozen daisies.
Which were both beautiful.
Both were gorgeous. She took the little package and put in there to extend their
And
life.
that really does work.
Yes, it does. She
absolutely
changed
does
the
work.
water.
And cut
She
the ends.
Cut the ends off
Every day.
freshly on both of them. Oh, you did that every day?
Yes, I did.
Oh, my
And the roses
goodness.
took a hit.
And the roses went down.
And they're gone, long gone. And I'm still got the daisies.
The daisies will last for a long
And I keep
time.
trimming them, changing the water. That stuff I put in the water's long gone. I
You are
still
gonna
have the
get-
daisies.
You are going to get, now, if you were to place them at the cemetery, you will probably get 10 days undisturbed. You know, you put the package in there, fresh cut, pick your daisies.
Plenty of water.
Yeah, plenty of water. And and if they were in the foam there, the fiber, you probably get an extension 7 to 10 days. That's a lot for a fresh flower.
It is.
at
I'm
the
amazed that
cemetery.
they're still
really
going.
is.
When was Mother's Day? And I'm still got
yeah,
this vase of
I don't know,
flowers
2
that's
weeks ago,
looking
3
good.
weeks ago, man.
Now I got to say, my favorite actually was the fresh lilacs out of our yard.
Yeah.
And they smelled beautiful. But you know what? No matter how much you trim the ends, they don't last very long in a vase.
They don't, but that was the next thing I was getting at. Lilacs and peonies are the two things. In the Midwest, peonies are extremely popular to take to the gravesite,
Like
and
a
that
rose,
was
they're
actually
beautiful.
the only reason that people used to buy them when I sold hundreds and hundreds of peony root. We had just the dry root laying up on the table with the colors marked on there, and we would sell little tiny pieces, and it'd take a year or two. And they were buying them specifically for either at the cemetery or to grow at their house and cut and take to the cemetery. But they don't last. They absolutely do not last very long.
Now, in general, more fragrant flowers don't last as long as non-fragrant. Because when I used to grow T-Brid high roses,
T-Brid high?
yeah,
Hybrid tea, maybe?
Yeah, there we go. T-Brid high roses.
I don't know. Maybe she's got a new rose I
That
don't know
was
about. There you go.
Unexpected. Sorry. But when I used to grow roses, the ones that were more fragrant tend to be more fragile and would fall apart earlier.
I honestly do not
Whereas
know.
the ones with no scent were beefy, hardy, thicker, and would last a whole lot longer. And I didn't know if that was in general in
I have
blooming
no
flowers.
clue. I really don't know. But I do know that lilacs in New England are probably the most popular decoration because it comes exactly on Memorial Day, the lilac. And of course, they're a little later than we are
They
here.
are. They have a later
They
start.
have a little bit later season. I wanted to mention to you that there's a lot of things, people say, oh, should I bother with a garden? I can get anything that I want from the local garden or from the store. We have a caller, so we're going to interrupt everything that we're doing. We're stopping right now.
Hey,
You're on the
somebody
line.
called us.
With Mr. and Mrs. Garden Doctor. What can we do for you?
Hello,
Hello. Yes.
it's me, Pavel.
Hey, how are you,
Is that
Taylor?
you, Taylor?
What are you doing today?
I'm going to ask when can we start watermelon and peppers?
When can
Ooh,
you start
watermelon.
watermelon and peppers?
Seeds or plants? I
Well,
wonder.
she's probably already started the seeds because I know a little bit about what she does.
Oh.
And you actually want to wait until the ground warms up. Papaw made a mistake and I put beans out too early. I was trying to cheat a little bit and I put the beans out and they just rotted right in the
It
ground.
killed 'em.
They were cold, they were too cold and they didn't want to grow.
You have to help me plant a
Peppers.
new row of beans, little girl, okay?
Peppers should only be planted when the soil temperature is above 60 degrees. So you lay your hand on the soil. If the soil feels cold, it's probably not ready for peppers. Watermelons, if you start them in a pot, they also like the ground warm. But you can warm the ground up if you put down clear plastic because the sun will shine through the clear plastic. It'll heat up the ground and you can get the plants in the ground a little bit early. When you water your peppers, always water them with the water that's in the hose.
Oh, that
because
hot water that comes out first?
Is hot, and it will grow better peppers,
Just don't get it on your feet. It's really hot.
and it'll also grow better cucumbers. Does
Well,
that answer your question?
does that mean soon?
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes.
I have got an onion here. You can't see it because you can't get channel 3. But I have an onion here that is called a candy onion. And it is delicious.
She loves all kinds of vegetables and
She-
is willing to try
She
everything.
will eat weeds. We've been walking out through the woods and she'll say, "Can I eat that? Can I eat that? Can I eat that? Can I eat
That's
that?"
because she's a vegan. She
That's
likes
it.
all vegetables.
She's a vegan and she's also a person of knowledge about what's outside.
Yes.
She knows what she can and can't eat, what she should mess with and not. And I really am very proud of that. So,
And Meme grew some beautiful broccoli. I'll try to save you some. Okay?
lovely broccoli. We have some Swiss chard. You got to come out and cut some. Okay? I love you.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.
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 Oh, they're so cute.
How you can't see them?
I
You
just know
How
they're
do you know?
cute.
Yeah. Yes, well, they're adorable. They're darling. Yes. Now, what I was going to say is, people tell me, oh, what's the sense of growing a garden? A lot of people have got away from growing gardens. When I had the garden center, we would sell 1 ton of seed potatoes a week.
That's insane.
1 ton. of
Wow,
sweet
what are they
potatoes.
doing with them?
Well, let me tell
Growing
you,
some sweet
1
potatoes.
ton of sweet potato or seed potatoes will produce an unbelievable amount of potatoes. And also, I sold my sweet potato bed clean. I would pull all of the sweet potatoes. It was a monstrous bed. I think I grew 5,000 plants there, and I would pull it clean every week, and it would grow again, and I would pull it clean again, pull it clean again. We would do that for about 3 weeks. I don't even know. You can get sweet potato plants, fresh ones, and I think down at Whitetail Acres.
I
but
believe they still have them.
I don't know where else you get them.
Well, one of the greatest things about growing a garden, in my opinion, is that it's therapy. It's physical therapy. It's mental therapy. If it wasn't for my garden, I'd probably need a psychiatrist.
I think you need one.
Maybe I
anyway,
do
but,
anyway, but I love the garden. You go out there and all you're thinking about, and then to work so hard and play in the dirt and put in seeds, and then to come out with something as gorgeous as this that you can eat, which for somebody who grew up in a
Fabulous.
city and never grew anything.
Fabulous broccoli.
I mean, that's the reward feeling of it is.
And it's just as
Very
tender as it can be.
rewarding.
There's not a bug on it. It's crystal clean. Now, you can also grow varieties that you cannot buy. You can't buy these varieties. You can't get candy onion.
I've never heard of that.
Never will you find candy onion unless you grow it yourself. Certain types of Swiss chard, there's about 5 of them on the market. And some of them are much better than others, but they don't hold well. See this here? It's already starting to wilt. Look at the wilt on this. We picked this about 5 minutes, 10 minutes before we got here. Just barely before we got here. So, but if I'd have cut this and taken it directly into the house and used it as a green or in a salad, it would be as fresh and delicious. And it's an excellent variety, but it does not keep well. So there is reasons to grow your garden. You can grow tomatoes that you can never buy.
The heirloom, some of the varieties, the seeds that are
Hundreds of
passed
varieties
down.
of tomato plants.
Well, the big rage now is kale. Everyone's caught on. They love kale. I didn't know there was more than one kind of kale. We have two kinds. Two kinds of kale in our garden right now.
Yes, yes.
So I didn't know there even
and
was
kale
two.
is absolutely
this is
fabulous.
delicious.
It's not near as bitter or as people always tell me that, oh, that's bitter. That's a terrible green or whatever. Mustard green too, they think is terrible. There's been a lot of natural hybridization. I'm not sure I like the other type of hybridization where they have just selected the plants that have tasted the best or looked the best, produced the best, and so forth. And they've gotten back to that where you're growing a stronger, healthier, better plant that actually tastes good. Unlike the early girl tomato, which I hate. It was hybrid specifically
Just
to
to
have
start
an early
early.
tomato.
Okay.
That's all it was for. And suddenly we have an early tomato. It tastes like cardboard. What is the purpose of this thing? But-
Tastes like cardboard,
yeah,
huh?
well, I have no idea why people would buy that. But a gentleman asked me about the poppies, and also the other question was, and I was going to bring one in, I did not, but I really want people to look this up. There is a tree growing in Fayette County, growing in the state of Indiana and Ohio, that is the tree from hell.
Oh, the tree of heaven, it's actually
No,
called.
it's not the tree of heaven, it's the tree of hell. It grows faster and stronger, and it chokes everything out. And if you're driving up 3rd Street, as you go up the hill, on the right-hand side, the steep bank there, all that stuff, those trees that have choked everything else out, that have a leaf similar to a walnut. They're not close to a walnut, but they are somewhat similar, a little bit of a locust-type leaf. But it's a little more pale. It grows like a weed. It's much taller than the rest of them, and it chokes everything out. It's very difficult to kill. If you have one of these in your yard, mother plant or whatever, cut it down, get rid of it, try to kill it out, and if there are seedlings growing, try to chop them out. You may have to drill them and put poison in them to kill the root. This thing is vicious, and it's taking over Fayette County and a lot of the wet areas. If you could roll that...
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Jeez. Here we go. I'm going to eat some asparagus while we're
I'm
looking
eating
at
some
this.
more broccoli.
This is a little outtake that I taped earlier, and in regard to the veterans' issues. Hello, and welcome to the Garden Doctor's backyard again. We just returned with a load of flowers for my friends and customers in Connersville. It is Memorial Day. My wife is going to read what the official definition of Memorial Day is, and it's not about veterans. However, I'm sure everybody has heard a lot in the news about the veterans medical system, and I'm here to tell you that I've been involved with the medical system, for a very long time. I have seen the bad, the ugly, and I have also seen the good, and I have not heard a lot about the good. It sounds like the whole system is awash, and in fact it's not. Now, they told me that there was nothing wrong with me over and over and over again, when in fact there was a lot wrong with me. I had diabetes, I had high blood pressure, I had H. pylori, I had peripheral neuropathy, and then because of lack of care, some of these issues were compounded, and also because of improper care. And there, as I said, many cases of being ignored, being denied, being sent home with no treatment whatsoever. So I've seen all of the negative, and it is true that these negatives should be identified. We should figure out what is wrong, and if someone is liable, where they hid the truth or actually caused injury, then they should definitely suffer the consequences. That's all well and good, but the witch hunt should only be a portion, and it is not a solution. And I guarantee you 100% that you cannot solve the VA medical system problems from the top down. You can't throw more money at it. You can't pay bonuses to the administrators and expect any solution whatsoever. All you're going to do is get corners cut, and you're going to get the same situation that we're in right now. There are solutions, though, and I have seen them and seen them work. I have been involved in advocating for other veterans, and a lot of advocating for myself until I finally received care. But I will tell you that I have visited facilities where the care is exemplary, where the efficiency is unbelievable, where it is far superior, in my opinion, to almost every single hospital I have ever been in. And that's including some of the best hospitals in the country. This VA facility, which is in Vermont, is one of the best that I know of on the planet. Now, there are others also. And what need be done is to identify why that is so good. And I can tell you, but it can't be done from the top down again. You can't just throw money at it and say, okay, we did one thing and that fixed the problem. That's not the solution. The solution is to put the power. I've got a motorcycle going by that we rarely hear because we're so far from the road, but when they take the corner, you can really hear them wind out. We have the potential here to solve a problem, and that is to put the power in the hands of the people that actually do the work, and the veterans. Put the power in their hands as well, and allow them to vent and identify what is wrong, but also ask them to tell you what is right. And I think a website should be set up at each and every facility. It should be encouraged that the people go to this website and make entries anonymously if they wish, but also offer for them to be backed up so that this information and these facts can be verified and someone will take responsibility for them. I think it's vitally important that we do this from the middle and the bottom up, not from the top down. And it can be done, and there are many, many people that would step forward, just like you see the people stepping forward now to complain. There are thousands that would step forward and say, this is what is right, and this is what we should do more of, and this is what works, and this is why it works. And in New Hampshire, or in Vermont, it serves both Vermont and New Hampshire, that facility is so good that they know what is wrong with you before you get to the hospital. If you are coming into the emergency room or for immediate care, and there's, for example, I drove a nail into my hand, and before I left the 50 miles to drive to the facility, I did as they asked us to do, and I called in, and they triaged me over the phone, and when I got there, I was rushed immediately into the emergency room, where I was met by the hand surgeon, and I was scheduled for surgery in the next 25 minutes. From the time I entered that hospital until I was in surgery was 30 minutes. That's how efficient that hospital is. And they did everything correct. They even identified a number of things that I was told that was not wrong with me, and sent me back to Indiana with some diagnoses that were vital to my health and my recovery. So, and there are other facilities that are just as good as the New Hampshire, or perhaps not as good, but in the same category. And there are also a lot of individuals out there that know the solutions. They are not the administrators. The administrators, the one that is at the top, is hired to save money and cut corners. They do not understand the everyday functions of a medical facility. I don't care what degrees they have. I don't care what level of education they have. And they should acknowledge that and simply be appointed for the purpose of administrating the finances only and trying to save some money if that's what their job is. But they should give the power to the individual departments because they know how to run their department. And they're the ones that should have more authority than to be told from the top down. It should come from middle management out and up. And if you know anything about the social media, if you know anything about I don't even know the names. Skype, I guess. Whatever else is out there, forward this on. I will be more than happy to testify before any congressman, to speak to anybody that wants to listen, because there is a solution, and I believe that I have it, and many other people know about it, but it's a snowball effect. Once the first website is set up, once this power exists, and we stop paying administrators bonuses for falsifying and cutting out the good food in the cafeteria and putting in cheaper food. Once we stop doing that and start putting the power back into the right hands and rewarding the right people for doing their job properly, then I think there will be a vast improvement in not only the VA medical system, but also in the feel of the system. Right now, when you walk into a VA, oftentimes the people that work there duck their heads. They don't want to meet you eye to eye. Now they do in Vermont because they're proud of what they do. And many of them, after serving 30 years, 25, 30 years at that facility, come back and volunteer their time after they have retired. That's how much they love that place. And they love the job that they do, and the fact that they do their job well. That really makes them feel good, and you can tell it in the people. And it's the same with a facility that's not doing their job well. When you walk in, you can tell as soon as you walk through the door how you are received. And if it is by people that are ashamed or in some way divert their eyes or don't want to look at you because they're afraid you might ask a question, you are in a facility that is poorly managed and is not doing its job as the best that it can. Thank you very much for listening to The Garden Doctor. I know this is somewhat off topic, but this is what is the hot topic right now. Thank you again. Hello, and we're back. Geez, that guy was ranting and raving. He was carrying on, wasn't he?
Going on and on.
But honestly, I do believe that there is a lot of positive in the system. and in the VA medical system, and it needs to be identified and it needs to be shared so that if it works over here, it'll work over there. But they're all so secret. They all want to run their own little ships and their own little organization. They need to quit that nonsense. Find what works and share it. Okay, we're going to share stuff with you too. And there's many things that work in the garden. Right now, people are, oh my God, am I too late? I don't know where that came from because
Too late.
you got plenty of time.
Might be
to
too
plant.
late for peas, but
Yeah, maybe the peas. Maybe you don't want to put in any broccoli. Oh, that, by the way, I wanted to tell you. A friend of mine 2 years ago went down and bought broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and something else. He saw the Garden Doctor show, and he said, geez, you know, I ought to plant some of that stuff. He saw some video. I don't even know what the video was. And he went out and bought these plants. And they sat there, and he fertilized them, he watered them, he fertilized. And finally he called me, and he said, can you come over here and see what's wrong with these plants? I bought them because you recommended. Well, what happened was, a lot of times garden centers, or especially people that aren't in the garden center business but sell plants, we won't mention any big box names, but they don't know when to throw things away.
like Walmart.
Things get, now I'm trying not to do that.
Sorry.
Things get root bound, and when they are root bound, they're not going to produce. If you have a broccoli, Brussels sprouts, or cauliflower that's hard stemmed, down at the base, when you look at it before you buy it, it's hard. You don't want that plant because it's not going to grow. And if you can pull it up out of that pot and it wants to hold into the pot, it's root bound, or you look at it and there's no dirt. It's used up all the dirt. It's nothing but a ball of roots. There's very little chance that you're going to grow anything with that plant. So I would very strongly recommend that you not buy anything but fresh broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and the cold weather crops.
Cabbage.
Now, remember cabbage. Remember that you can plant them again in the fall, but you got to plant early. And a smart garden center will have these plants in the fall because it's a boon to them to get you to come in and have another crop. And they grow fantastic. The colder it gets, the better they grow. And if you have any bug problems, of course, they go away because of the cold. So it's a tremendous time to
Check your plants. They
yeah,
should
check your
not be
plants.
root bound.
If you get a tomato plant and it's in a small cell pack, you know, pull one out if you're going to buy
Because they're
6
often
or 8.
like that. Now, can you break apart the roots before you plant? Will that help?
That's what I was going to say. If you soak that plant in water and you break the roots apart and you straighten them out like you're combing knots out of a hair.
Like detangling. say.
Detangle that hair and get it straightened out so that it's not in a circular fashion or square or whatever it is, the container it's in. Peat pots are much better. So, this Bonnie Best, they've got it
Well, even
perfected.
with perennials we've planted in our own yard and they've come and they've been root bound or whatever, we either slice the roots or pull them apart a little bit before we plant them because they do get that root memory, I guess it's called, where it continues to grow in a circle and just won't spread out and grow up. So that's the same issue, right?
Yes, it is. People have asked me, how is it that your plants that you do plant around the few jobs that we do here in town still they're so instantly gorgeous? Well, it's because I don't use cell packs. I use either a 6-inch potted plant or sometimes even an 8, 10, or 12 or 14-inch hanging basket. Now you can take a hanging basket and plant it in the ground just like any
No
other
reason
plant.
not to, sure.
What you do is you snap off the hooks, of course, or if it's wires, undo the wires and pull that up, flip it upside down, and have somebody take the pot off. Generally, it will have roots pretty tight in there. Run your finger or a knife. I prefer that it be a finger because if I'm holding the plant, I don't want
No
somebody
knives,
else running
gotcha.
a knife across there, okay? So rip across with your finger in 2 directions.
Just to separate the
Crossways.
directions.
You're just breaking the roots instead of them going around in a circle, but you're not ripping out all the roots. Make sure that you line where the plant is going to go in the ground. Take the pot, one of the pots, and that'll tell you the size, how deep to put it, and make sure there's no air pockets around it. And then just to be sure, you want to pack that circle real tight and real nice with some potting mix a good potting soil, Miracle Grow potting mix, any of them that have the fertilizer and everything in it, about an inch worth of it. And then when you set this plant down in, push it down and make sure there are no air pockets around it, and then water it in well so that that soil, that potting soil, will swell up and take up the air pockets. The biggest danger to a newly installed plant is air pockets. If you don't mud it in, and the guys tell me, I tell you, water this plant. Here's how I want you to water it. Water the plant until you see the water standing around it. Go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one. When you've hit 7 or 8 plants, go back and start over again. And water it until you see the water standing on it again. Then when you've gone through all of the plants that you just put in, and you're at the very end, start over again.
Do it again.
And for the 3rd time, go through that whole
For a
entire
new
thing
installation.
until it stands. So you're watering every plant 3 times. Don't flood them out. Don't flush them out. Water it until the water stands with a good wand.
And then come
not
back.
something that's a strong burst of water.
Yeah.
You don't want to flush a hole in there.
I've done that.
Use a good wand. Whether it's in a basket or in a pot or you're in the ground.
I like those showers, gentle
Those shower
sprays.
heads, yeah. And water the whole area. Don't just water the plant, because you have to water the surrounding area as well. So you're watering the plant, the surrounding area, you're making sure that soil that you put in gets moist and takes up the air pocket.
And that's what does it. When you start with something that's bigger than a little sprig, you're not using just a cell pack. You start with a good quality plant and a decent size plant. Otherwise, you're spending how long to wait for that plant to grow to even be worthy of being planted. You start with a good size plant. You put it in good soil, good conditions, good environment, good watering, good start. And you're off to a much better start.
You're off to the races. Now you've got to keep it blooming like gangbusters. You don't want to overwater and you don't want to underwater, and you want to feed. A hose-on liquid applicator is an excellent way to take the guesswork out of it. Now, I prefer to mix the powder. It's cheaper, and I like to use the one that has all the trace elements. Peters makes one.
Yeah, and I'm just used to
I like
doing
the
that.
seaweed.
It's easy, it's cheap. You can put iron in there if you want to, if you need
you've
other
got plants
nutrients.
that are yellow,
sure.
yeah, you can do all that. But if you want to just do a liquid feed, the bottle screws on, and it'll cost you a little more because it's a convenient item. So
And unless you have acres of gardens like us, one purchase of this type of fertilizer will probably last you the whole year. So
but do it
it's worth
every single week. Water your plants. Do not overwater. Plants should dry out and beg for
They
water.
should be thirsty before
They
you
should
drink
be
them.
thirsty. Then you give them a good solid drink of water, and you never let them dry out too far, because if you do, then you got to go through the whole 3-step process again.
But then
to
when
get
you
the
give
ground
them a drink, once they get thirsty and you give them a drink, give them a real drink.
Yes.
You water them till the water
Hanging
stands
baskets
again.
too.
Go back and you always give them that second watering. Every time I water anything, he has insisted upon it, and it works. When you do water them, whenever it may be, make sure you do it at least twice. Let that first watering will expand. We've talked about the sponge thing. That first watering will expand that sponge. The second watering will let that sponge soak it up for
Right.
the plant.
And the fertilizer, if you're going to do a foliar feed, whether it be granular or liquid or whatever, that's the last thing you do. You water it heavy first. Let it get a good drink of water. Then you put the foliar feed on, because foliar feeding is not watering.
Nope.
It's feeding.
Big difference.
Okay, and you don't want to wash that away. You don't want to dilute that down. Now, some people like to use granular. That's fine, but if you put the granular on and you do overwater or it overrains, the granular actually over-releases.
And it can
okay?
burn the leaves and in the cracks where the granules
Yeah, if
get
the granules
stuck.
get stuck on the
I don't
leaves,
care
it can
for
burn a
it.
hole. I use both. I use a side dressing of granular
And in pots,
in the
it's almost
soil
impossible.
before I plant. I side dress the whole area with a granular. Then I do the liquid feed, but I mix my own. I really like to use seaweed. Don't use seaweed if you're in an area where there is deer or rabbits.
They like
They
it
love
too.
that stuff. You've got to protect from that. But if not, the seaweed will give you the most gorgeous vegetables and flowers that you've ever seen. It makes me look good. It really does. Now, we also had questions about the lawn. Some of the lawns came through this year, and they've got these different types of things going on. Red thread is something that we're getting more of. Red thread is simply a red appearance on your lawn, and if you see this, you really should disinfect your lawnmower. And you should disinfect your lawnmower anyway.
And just a solution of bleach water will
Solution
accomplish
of bleach
that?
water, but don't do it where it's going to bleach out your driveway or your sidewalk or something
And your
like
wife's
that.
doormats?
Yeah,
and-
be careful because a very mild solution of bleach. You don't need very much.
No,
5%.
It takes like a capful for a gallon to
Yeah,
be an effective
But
disinfectant.
first, you pull the spark plug off the lawnmower, get up underneath there and scrape all of the old grass
So
out
you can
because
spread
that's where
that?
the mold. Oh yes, you will spread it every time
wow.
you mow. You will spread disease to your lawn.
Oh, my.
If you have red thread, or if you have snow mold, or if you have and certain weeds, you'll carry around forever too. So it's always a good idea to scrape out the excess up underneath there. And there are products now made. There's a really cool product that you spray up underneath your lawnmower, and nothing will stick.
Oh, I like that idea.
Oh, I like
Because I've
it.
seen you, not that I've done it, but I've seen him out there
This is-
scraping the under part
Yeah,
of
this
it.
is good stuff.
Now, what
And
about Pam cooking spray? We used to put that on the
that's
front of our
fine.
car on
Yeah,
the grill
you put
in
it on
Florida.
on your shovel.
And you go across Alligator Alley, you'd have all these bugs stuck, but if you had sprayed with Pam in advance, it would wash right off.
Alligator Alley. How'd you like to live in a place like that?
Well,
Mosquitoes down there this big. I am not kidding.
I've seen some in New Hampshire that big too. It's the state bird, I think.
It's state bird. They have these cockroach-looking things. What are
Oh,
them
gross.
things?
Palmetto bugs.
Palmetto
Anyone who's
bugs.
been to Florida and
What the
you know
heck
what
is
I'm
this all
talking
about?
about. Palmetto bugs, flying cockroaches this big. If I never see another one as long as I live, it'll be too
My
soon.
father stayed down there in the wintertime, and
He lived in
had me come
Kissimmee.
down, and he wanted me to go pick up some knees.
That's pretty swampy inland.
Yeah, and we're walking
it is.
in through this thing, and there's these snakes and gators and everything, and he says, "Oh, they won't bother you.
They don't, for the most part.
They
but
don't bother you." And there's a
I'm
poisonous
sure
snake going.
all of Kissimmee is completely developed now. Don't worry about that.
My son, my oldest son Michael, used to fish with
Water moccasins?
water moccasins.
Poisonous
He had
snakes
no
for
idea
bait?
they were poisonous, but he would catch them
Oh, my.
using a little felt fly, and then he would cut their heads off. And he
Oh,
had no
gross.
idea that these things, and he's using them for bait. And he would catch just fantastic
Great smallmouth,
bass.
huh? Yeah.
But one day he was back there, and I saw what he was doing. I said, "What are you?" I told him what he was doing.
Oh, my.
You know, he just didn't have the knowledge. But fortunately, he never got bit. So
Well, let's take a minute to do a thank you Memorial Day for all of those who have had
Yes.
loved ones who have served.
you know,
And
yes, and it's kind of strange. I am the keynote speaker in Groton, New Hampshire, right now. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, I think I was
He's
supposed
not
to be
there.
speaking up there. I'm really not there. This is not, my shadow or anything.
we meant to be there actually, but with my son's illness this winter and now him going to St. Vincent's and anticipating heart surgery, we didn't make it back up as we
this
had
that I finally
planned.
had to have done. So yeah, we didn't make it back up as we planned. So,
But we
for
forgot
those
to tell
people in
them.
New Hampshire who are going to be watching this as soon as they can get it available. Thank you very much for all of those who have served.
Thank you to their
And
families who have also made the ultimate sacrifice of fathers and husbands and loved ones.
And it's a pleasure and an honor to do this show, and especially on Memorial Day.
And it's definitely a pleasure and an honor to have you as my husband.
Thank you, dear.
It's not Veterans Day, though. Your day is coming.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. This is not the day for anything else except for decorating the grave sites. Of,
Decoration of those who have died protecting our country while at war.
Any last words? We're going to leave this stuff here for John to take home.
I'm taking home my broccoli.
No,
I want my broccoli. That was a lot of growing power put into that. Come
leaving
on.
the broccoli.
Yeah, I was chewing on it. That was delicious. That's right. He doesn't want the part I chewed on, so.
And they had to come in their holiday too to run the show here, and we appreciate their efforts.
Yes,
and
very
we
much.
really do enjoy doing the show. It's sometimes is a pain, but it's a pain that we like.
If we like it, or we wouldn't be here.
We love the pain.
Right?
Thank you all again, and you all have a wonderful Memorial Day. And don't forget to watch the game, which is coming on.
And don't
in
forget to watch
like an hour and a half.
Homegrown Health. Christopher and Jen
Oh, yes,
Matthews
Christopher
have a
and
new
Jen
show.
have.
Yes.
Yes.
They are definitely his son, our son and daughter-in-law, and they have an awesome
We got to get
insight.
forced to do a fishing show, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. Hey, I'm the fishing queen.
Yeah,
I want
know.
the fishing
Well, yeah,
show.
You can go with
All right.
Forrest to
You
do
got
fishing.
10 seconds here now,
Yeah,
so
you
you,
got 10 seconds.
you better
Well,
use it wisely.
We can use up 10 seconds without any problem
Thank you for
whatsoever.
watching.
But Candy, grow something in your yard. Even if you grow it in a pot in the front yard, if you grow it in a hanging basket, it doesn't matter. Grow something.
You can do it.
And have your children help you. Thank you. And we'll see you next time.
The Garden Doctor.